The Girl Who Walked with the Moon. In the quiet village of Umudike, nestled between ancient forests and red earth roads, there lived a girl named Amara. She was only 14, with braided hair decorated with small beads and eyes that always seemed to look beyond what others could see. While other children played during the day, Amara preferred the night, especially when the moon was full, because that was when the shadows began to move. Not the ordinary shadows cast by people or trees. These were different. They stretched longer than they should. They shifted when no one was walking, and sometimes they whispered her name. Amara never told anyone. Her mother had warned her long ago, "Some things are better left unseen, my child." But one night, everything changed. Amara stood outside her family's mud hut, the warm glow of a lantern spilling onto the dirt path. The full moon hung heavy and bright above the thatched roofs. A tall shadow stopped in front of her. It had no person attached to it. The shadow bowed slightly and spoke in a voice like dry leaves. "Amara, the moon is dying, and when it dies, so will we." Amara's breath caught in her throat. "Who are you?" "We are the ones who came before. We are the memory of this land. But something is feeding on us. Come, before the light fades forever." The shadow turned and walked toward the forest, and Amara, heart pounding, followed. The forest was darker than usual. The trees stood like silent elders, their branches reaching toward the sky as if trying to hold the moon in place. Amara walked carefully, her bare feet soft on the damp earth. Around her, more shadows appeared, tall and short, young and old, all moving in the same direction. They led her to a wide clearing where the moonlight fell like silver rain. Hundreds of shadows stood there, gathered in a quiet circle. Some looked peaceful, some looked tired, many looked afraid. An elderly female shadow stepped forward. Her form was gentle, but the edges of her body were fading like smoke. "Child of the living," she said, "for many generations we have walked beside your people under the full moon. We guide the lost, we protect the young, we remind the living of who they are. But a darkness has entered the village. It is stealing our light, one moon at a time." Amara looked around. Several shadows were so thin she could see the trees through them. "Who is doing this?" she whispered. The old shadow's voice grew heavy. "Someone among the living is feeding on our memory, someone who does not want the old stories to survive." The next morning, Amara returned to the village with the weight of the ancestors on her shoulders. She watched the people carefully. She watched the children playing. She watched the market women, and she watched the elders. There was one man who stood out, Chief Okorie. He was respected, powerful, and always careful. But Amara noticed something strange. Whenever the moon was full, Chief Okorie stayed inside his compound. He never walked under the moonlight, and his shadow never moved on its own. That night, when the village slept, Amara followed him. She stayed far behind as he left his house carrying a small clay pot. He walked deep into the forest, past the places where the shadows usually gathered, until he reached a massive iroko tree, the oldest tree in the land. There, under the thick roots, he dug a shallow hole and buried something. Then he covered it carefully and left. Amara waited until he was gone. Her hands shook as she dug into the soft earth. She found a small wooden box, dark with age. Inside it lay a black stone that seemed to swallow the moonlight around it. It pulsed with a cold, hungry light. The moment Amara's fingers touched the stone, a wave of pain moved through the forest. Far away, she heard the shadows cry out. Amara carried the stone back to the clearing. The ancestors gathered around her, their forms trembling. The old female shadow spoke again, her voice weaker than before. "That is a memory stone. Many years ago, Chief Okorie's grandfather made a dark bargain with forces that should never be trusted. He trapped the voices and memories of the ancestors inside this stone so that the living would slowly forget the old ways. the old truths, the old names. Every full moon, the stone grows stronger by feeding on our light. If it is not destroyed before the next dawn, we will vanish completely, and with us, the true history of this land will die. Amara stared at the cold black stone in her hands. How do I destroy it? Only someone who still listens with a pure heart can break its power. You must take it to the highest place in the village, the great rock in the square, and hold it under the full moon until the light of the ancestors returns. But be warned, child. The man who owns this secret will not let it go easily. Amara ran. She ran through the forest paths, past the quiet huts, until she reached the village square. The full moon was directly above, bathing everything in silver. She climbed onto the large flat rock that stood in the center of the square, the place where announcements were made and stories were once told. She raised the memory stone high above her head. Almost immediately, Chief Okorie appeared, his face twisted with anger. "Stop that girl," he shouted. "She does not understand what she is doing." People began to come out of their houses, confused and curious. Mothers held their children close. Elders frowned. Amara's voice rose clear and strong above the growing crowd. "This stone is stealing the memory of our ancestors. Every full moon it grows stronger, while our history grows weaker. Chief Okorie's family has kept the secret for generations. They buried our past so they could control our future." Chief Okorie lunged toward her, but the shadows rose from the ground like a living wall, surrounding Amara protectively. The entire village fell silent. Under the power of the full moon, the black stone began to crack. Soft golden light poured from the fractures. The light grew brighter and brighter until the stone shattered completely in Amara's hands, turning into harmless dust that the wind carried away. The shadows grew strong again. They filled the square, tall and clear, no longer fading. The old female shadow stood beside Amara and spoke to the people in a voice that everyone could finally hear. "We never left you. We only waited for someone brave enough to listen. The past is not a burden. It is a light. And those who try to bury it will one day be buried by their own darkness." Chief Okorie fell to his knees. The truth of his family's secret could no longer be hidden. Years passed. The people of Umudike changed. They began to greet the moving shadows with respect. Children were taught the old stories again. Elders sat under the moonlight and spoke the names of those who had come before. And Amara continued to walk with the moon. She became known throughout the land as the Keeper of Shadows, the girl who reminded her people that the past is never truly gone, as long as someone is still willing to see it. On quiet nights, when the wind